discussion about how many rounds the shotgun would hold, but it basically boiled down to there was a plug in the shotgun, and that with a plug in the shotgun would hold one cartridge in the chamber, two in the magazine, but the shotgun that he examined, that was the one that Mr. Leverett had, he found one in the chamber and one in the magazine. You heard from Amy Seward. She was the lady who was the firearms expert that testified concerning the operation of the firearms. You heard the testimony of Allison Murtha. She was the lady who came down from Pennsylvania that did the testing on the gunshot residue test that there was testimony about, that was taken from Brian Leverett at the medical examiner's office. And she testified for what, about half an hour, 45 minutes, and basically her testimony boiled down to she cannot say that Mr. Leverett fired the shotgun, but she cannot eliminate the possibility that Mr. Leverett did fire the shotgun. So she couldn't say one way or another. You then heard the testimony of investigator Josh Mott, no relation to the co-counsel in this case, and he was the one who attended the autopsy. He had testified that he had taken some items of evidence from the medical examiner, including the gunshot residue test that you heard testimony about. Then you heard the testimony of Detective Ford. That was testimony that was given yesterday. During his testimony, he had the opportunity to see the statement that was given by Ray Greenlaw on October 29, 2011. He had the opportunity to hear what Mr. Greenlaw had to say. I think the testimony was that everything that Mr. Greenlaw said to Detective Ford was recorded, and you had the opportunity, therefore, to see everything and hear everything that Mr. Ray Greenlaw said. And you heard Mr. Greenlaw tell law enforcement about being afraid, the incident that led up to hitting Justin Riley with the machete, his fear of somebody coming into the house, wanting to protect his mother, being concerned for his safety, being concerned for the safety of his brother. And he explained the circumstances to Detective Ford surrounding what had happened on that particular early morning hours and why he had the fears that he had. He also had the opportunity to see the statement of Wayne Greenlaw. And again, according to the testimony, the statement was recorded in its entirety. So you got to see everything and hear everything that Wayne Greenlaw told law enforcement about this incident. And you had the opportunity to hear Wayne Greenlaw explain the circumstances surrounding this particular incident. You had the opportunity to hear Wayne Greenlaw explain why he was in fear for his life, why he was in fear for the safety of his mother, and why he was in fear for the safety of his brother. You also had the opportunity to hear Detective Ford indicate that he was the main investigator in the case. Or, well, he and I guess it was Investigator Lee were the main investigators in the case. And on cross-examination by Mr. Lawrence, Detective Ford indicated that based on the work that he did in the case, the investigation that he did in the case, the reviewing of interviews that were conducted in the case, that it confirmed that Justin Riley and Brian Leverett came back to 9 Aspen Street prior to Mr. Ray Greenlaw hitting him with the machete. That it confirmed that they were told to leave, they left, and they subsequently came back. That was his testimony. That's what the evidence that he had gathered from the statements and the other work that he had done on the case was able to confirm. He also indicated that based on the work that he had done on the case, reviewing the interviews and the investigation that he did, that he was able to confirm that Mr. Leverett had a shotgun. And he was able to confirm that Mr. Leverett fired the shotgun. And of course, these are all important factors in this case. And finally, you had the opportunity to hear the last witness that was presented by the state, Dr. Gallagher, the medical examiner. And he talked to you about the there were 4 injuries. He talked about the 2 fatal injuries to Mr. Leverett, and he also indicated to you that Mr. Leverett had a 0.194% blood alcohol level, which he indicated was about 2.5 times the legal limit if you're for DUI. But at this point in time, I just want to remind you that the trial is not over with. At this point in time, we have the opportunity to call witnesses on behalf of Ray Greenlaw. And in just a few minutes, when I'm done with my opening statement, we will be calling 3 witnesses. We'll be calling Shirley Danielick. We'll be calling a lady by the name of Mary Cassell, and we're going to be calling an investigator by the name of Robert Ryan. And we expect that Shirley Danielick will testify that she is the mother of Ray and Wayne Greenlaw. And the reason why Ms. Danielick's testimony is important is because there's been testimony that the Greenlaws were concerned for the safety of their mother, that their mother was living there at the residence. And so we're going to call Shirley Danielick to testify that she had been living at that residence at 9 Aspen Street for about a month, that Mr. Ray Greenlaw had moved in shortly after she had moved in, and all 3 of them were staying there at 9 Aspen Street, which was the residence actually owned by Wayne Greenlaw. That sometime during the day of October 28th, she saw Scott Ciros and Kendra Wallace, and that she recalled Kendra at some point in time showed her an engagement ring, that Scott and Kendra left, and that Ms. Danielick finally went to bed. She had her own bedroom. We would expect that she'll testify that at that time, Mr. Ray Greenlaw and Mr. Wayne Greenlaw were there at the house, and that she went to sleep. She went to bed, went to her room, went to sleep. And she woke up to the sound of Scott Searle's voice and him basically saying, I'm responsible for it. And she didn't really think much about it, so she went back to sleep. We expect that she'll testify that she heard some gunshots, and that she got up from bed, went to the bathroom, and when she was walking to the bathroom, she saw Ray Greenlaw with a pistol, and that he laid the pistol on the corner of Wayne's bed in Wayne's room. And that subsequently she went back to bed, and at some point in time in that series of events, the SWAT team came into the house, they woke her up, and they had entered the house. But again, it's significant that you hear from Ms. Danielick, because it confirms that she was in fact living there and was there on the night of this particular incident. Again, I mentioned we're going to be calling Mary Cassell. Mary Cassell lives at 15 Aspen Street, which is, if you're looking out the front door of 13 Aspen where the incident occurred, her house would be the house right next door on the left. We expect she'll say that she was awakened by the sound of gunfire at about 5:38 to 5:40 in the morning. She went into her living room, peeked out a window, saw a male figure, and she saw the male figure walking towards Barbara Meadows' driveway. And that she got startled. Something happened, she got startled, and she called 911. And again, the significance, she's not going to be a very long witness. I don't anticipate she will be, but the significance of her testimony is the timeline. The time that she called 911, which is sometime around 5:38 in the morning. And then we're going to call an investigator by the name of Robert Ryan. We expect that Mr. Ryan will testify that sometime during his investigation in this case, he went out to the area where this incident occurred, and that he measured distances. He measured distances from 9 Aspen Street to 11 Aspen Street. He measured distance from 9 Aspen Street to 13 Aspen Street. He measured from 9 Aspen Street to 14 Aspen Street, which is the residence that Brian Leverett lived at. And he'll tell you how he did that and the equipment that he used, and he'll tell you what the distances were. And when we get into the closing argument, we'll argue the significance of those distances. All I can really do at this point in time is ask all of you to keep your minds open until you've heard all the testimony, until you've seen all the evidence, until you've heard the law that the judge will instruct you on at the conclusion of the evidence, and until you hear the closing arguments of the attorneys. And if you do that, which I'm sure you will, after you go back into that jury room and start considering the evidence and the testimony and the law, it's our belief that you will all agree that the state has failed to prove Ray Greenlaw guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, that they have failed to prove him guilty beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, that you will agree that there was justifiable use of deadly force that unfortunately led to the death of Brian Leverett, and that you will find him not guilty of first-degree murder. We believe that after you consider all the evidence and the testimony and the law, when you're back there deliberating, that you will agree that the state has failed to prove Ray Greenlaw guilty of attempted first-degree murder on Justin Riley, that you will agree that Ray Greenlaw was justified in the use of deadly force against the attack of Justin Riley, and that therefore you will find Mr. Ray Greenlaw not guilty of attempted first-degree murder. And we believe that when you go back into that jury room and you consider all the testimony and the evidence that's been presented in the case, you will agree that the state has failed to prove that Mr. Ray Greenlaw wantonly or maliciously shot into the building at 13 Aspen Street on October 29, 2011, and that therefore you will find Mr. Ray Greenlaw not guilty of shooting into a building. Thank you. First witness we would call, Your Honor, is Shirley Daniel.
Just before the witness is called, we approach on matter real quickly.
brought in at this time. I think they may be. Mr. Lawrence, would you mind holding on to the Yes, I want to just make sure.
Mrs. Dan, I'll need you to put your purse right here for me, please. Okay, you're going to step up here to the podium. I want you to raise your right hand to be sworn in and answer out loud.
There you go.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Follow me. Okay, this is a ramp, okay? So hold on if you need to, it's a ramp. Hop up a little bit, we're gonna get a little bit closer to the microphone. There you go, okay, perfect. Witness is seated.
Thank you.
May inquire.
All right. Ma'am, could you tell us your name, please?
Shirley Danila,
And spell that last name for us, please.
D like in David, A-N-Y-L-U-K.
And ma'am, if for some reason you can't hear the questions, be sure to tell us so that
I
we
will.
we can repeat them, okay? All right. And Ms. Danilik, how old are you at the present time?
79,
Now, back in October, specifically October 29th, 2011, how old were you?
76,
And back specifically on October 29th, 2011, where were you living?
at 9 Aston Street,
In Daytona Beach, correct?
yes.
Now, whose residence was that?
Wayne Greenlaws,
And Wayne, your last name is Danilik, but tell
Right.
us what relationship you are to Wayne Greenlaw.
he's my son.
And at that time, was there anybody else living there at that residence?
Ray Greenlaw,
And tell us what relationship Ray Greenlaw is.
another son.
So when do you think that you moved, in relation to October 29, 2011, when do you think it was that you moved into that residence?
I didn't hear the end of that.
Okay. In relation to October 29th, 2011, when do you think you moved into 9 Aspen with your son Wayne?
Around the beginning of the month, or maybe the beginning of the second week.
And when you moved into the residence at the beginning approximately of October of 2011, was your other son Ray there at that point in time?
He was at that time,
He was or was not?
was.
Now, in relation to the events of October 29, 2011, I want to first ask you a couple questions about October 28, 2011. October 29th was the date that the incident occurred,
Right.
okay? I want to just ask you a couple things about October 28, the day before.
Okay.
On October 28, 2011, were you at the residence there at 9 Aspen?
Yes,
And on that particular day, did you see people that you knew by the name of Scott Searles and Kendra Walls?
yes.
And do you remember approximately what time it might have been that you saw Scott Searles and Kendra Walls? And if you don't know, just tell us you don't know.
Well, Scott Searles, it's hard to specify. He was in and out a lot. And Kendra didn't join them until later, towards evening. It was dark then.
And did Kendra Walls show you anything that symbolized something that had significantly happened to her that evening?
They were sitting out by a campfire in the back, and Scott Searles proposed to her.
Did she show you,
Pardon?
and did she show you an engagement ring or anything like
She
that?
showed me a ring. It was more like a promise ring, but they were both very excited talking about their children.
And this was, what, during the daylight hours or the night hours?
That would be after dark, so it's probably around 10-ish.
And at some point in time then, did you go to bed?
Not until around midnight,
Now, the residence there, how many bedrooms?
2,
And you're still living there, is that correct?
right,
And there was a master bedroom, I assume, correct?
correct.
Who stayed in that room?
Wayne,
And who stayed in the second bedroom?
I,
And to your recollection, where did your other son, Ray, sleep when he
he
was?
slept on the couch,
So you went to bed in that second bedroom around midnight, is that correct?
yes,
So we're getting into the morning hours of October 29,
Right.
2011, correct?
right,
Now, did something wake you up?
yes.
And what was it that woke you up?
I heard a loud, kind of like screechy voice, and all I heard was, I'm responsible for this, all of it. And then,
Go ahead, did you recognize the voice?
yes, that was Scott Searles. He gets overexcited, his voice gets very high-pitched.
And then after hearing that, did you just kind of nod off and go back to
Yes,
sleep?
I take 5 milligrams of Zolpidem.
Now, as you say you heard this voice that sounded like Scott Searles,
Yes,
you went back to sleep. Did you wake up again during that early morning
gunshots
hour?
woke me up,
You heard the sound of gunshots?
yes.
Are you able to say today how many gunshots you think you
No.
heard? And so when you were awakened by the sound of gunshots, what did you do?
Right away, I'm not sure. I know I had to get up and use the restroom.
And so
But that was when the gunshot stopped.
So the gunshot stopped, but you had to get up and go to the bathroom.
Yes.
And did you actually do that? Did you get up and go to the bathroom?
Yes.
And as you were heading into the bathroom, did you see either one or both of your sons?
Ray was coming through.
And did you see Ray go? Ray Greenlaw, your son.
What was the first part?
Where did you see him go?
Oh, he went into Wayne's bedroom.
And did you see what he did when he went into your son Wayne's bedroom?
He laid a pistol on the corner of Wayne's bed.
And then, after seeing that, did you go to the bathroom?
Yes, and shut the door, and when I came out, he was gone.
And then, after you went to the bathroom, what did you do then?
Went back to sleep. The Zolpidem doesn't make you sleep soundly. You wake up and hear things, but it makes it easier to drift back off to sleep.
So then you went back to sleep, and then was there something that woke you up again for a third time?
Yes, it was the SWAT team coming in.
And did they have you leave the residence, or did they let you go back to sleep?
Oh, it was a while, and then I was told that I needed to leave the residence, so I gave them Tammy's number, and my daughter came over and got me.
Thank you, I don't have anything further.
Counsel for Defendant Wayne Greenlaw, have any questions for Mr. Greenlaw?
I have no questions, Your
Mr. Will, cross-examination?
Before I begin, I'd like to review our request.
I think we need to approach,
Um,
unless you're going to deny it.
Do you have any additional argument?
Well, I don't know, maybe we better approach.
All right, you may approach.
Good morning, Miss Daniluk. How are you?
I'm,
Good. You love your boys very much, right?
yes,
You would say or do anything for them.
not just anything,
Well, I know, but you would do anything you could to help them, right?
right.
If one of them had asked you to call 911 that night, would you have called 911 for them?
I would have, yes, but I wasn't awake enough really to do that.
Well, you went to the bathroom and you saw Ray Greenlaw come through the
Yeah.
house with a gun.
Right.
He didn't tell you to call 911, did he?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, but if he had, you probably would have done that for him, right?
Yes,
Thank you, ma'am.
Were you correct, Mr. Ballerina?
No, Your Honor.
Great. Ms. Daniluk, I do have to instruct you on a rule. Can you hear me, ma'am? Can you hear me?
yes,
Okay, I need to instruct you on a rule. There's not too many witnesses left in the case, but I have to instruct you at this time that you are under a rule that requires you not to talk about your testimony that you gave here today with anyone else until the trial is over. If you were to violate the court's rule, that would subject you to criminal contempt of court proceedings. So, do you understand the instructions?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Subject to that, you are released. Don't forget your purse there, you're doing good. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Mary Cassell.
Just for everybody's information, after Ms. Cassell, I think we'll take a break.
That's fine.
I think we forgot to announce in the last one, although you may have previously, that she was a joint witness.
Yes, and all defense witnesses are joint witnesses, but there's joint defense witnesses. Follow me, please. Thank you. I need you to put your purse down right here for me, please. You step right over here to the podium, raise your right hand to be sworn in, and answer out loud.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Follow me, please. Witness is seated.
Thank you.
May inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, if you could please tell us your name,
Mary Cassell,
and if for some reason you can't hear a question, be sure to ask that it be repeated, all right? My wife accuses me of talking very loud, so you may not have a problem with me, but, and be sure that you speak up so that we can hear what you say today.
yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Ma'am, let me ask you, first of all, where do you currently reside?
15 Aspen Street, Daytona Beach,
And how long have you lived there?
since 1985.
And what do you do at the present time in regards to an occupation?
I'm a charge nurse at Halifax Medical Center,
And how long have you been there?
16 and a half years.
And so, having lived in that neighborhood for, about 30 years now, I would assume you're familiar with the location of 13 Aspen Street, 11 Aspen Street, 9 Aspen Street, correct? Now, Your Honor, could I approach for a second?
You may.
Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit C, and it's not really and ask you if, hold it up here. Do you recognize this house here that has the car and the kind of, let's say reddish driveway, but that's 13 Aspen Street? Right. And that's the middle photograph of State's Exhibit 6. Now, the top photograph, that also depicts, and we see what looks like the corner of a house there.
My house, 15.
Okay, so as you walk out the front door of 13 Aspen Street, your house would be the house right next door to the left.
Yes,
In other words, going west.
yes.
Thank you. Now, let me direct your attention, if I could, to the early morning hours of October 29th, 2011, and ask you if something occurred that kind of started you and caused you to wake up.
Yes, I heard gunfire.
Do you know how many shots you may have heard?
At least 3.
And do you have any idea about what time in the morning this was?
Roughly 5:35, 5:40.
And so you were awakened by the sound of this, what sounded like gunfire. What did you do?
I jumped out of bed. I went to my window, peeked through where the shades had been eaten by the dog. And I looked through and I got startled. My daughter had gotten up by then. And I pushed her back down the hallway and then I called 911.
Now, did you see anything as you looked out the window?
A shadow.
And the shadow that you saw, could you tell, was it like the shadow of a person? I mean, okay. And were you able to determine what direction it might have been heading?
It was heading towards the house up the driveway,
Okay, when you say toward the house, which house?
towards 13 Aspen. It was just on the other side of my mother's car, which was parked not in my driveway, but more towards 13 in the yard.
And so you indicated that you called 911.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall what time it was that you called 911?
Not exactly, but I think it was about 5:38. About 5:38.
About 5:38? Okay. And then ultimately, did you become aware that members of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office were in the neighborhood?
Yes, because I was in my garage. I had slipped out to my garage because my garage back door was open, so my dogs could get out to go out and pee. And I had slipped out and closed that.
Okay.
And I could hear, when the sheriff's department arrived, I could hear them quite loudly and clearly, so.
All right. Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Any additional inquiry by counsel for defendant Wayne Greenlaw?
Amen.
Cross-examination?
One question. Good morning, Ms. Cassell.
Like,
Did you hear any gunshots after you called 911?
I do not recall.
Okay, thanks.
Do you read the right, Mr. Ballerino?
No, Your Honor.
May we release Ms. Cassell from her subpoena?
I have no objection to that.
Any objection from defendant, from Wayne Greenlaw?
Amen.
Ms. Cassell, and let me inquire in the state, any objection?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I need to instruct you on a procedural rule that the court does impose on all witnesses, and that is that you not discuss your testimony here today with any of the other witnesses. You will also, if for any reason you are not leaving the courthouse directly, you may have no contact with any of the jury members. They're easily identified by their plastic juror badges that they wear. So make sure you do not discuss your case and you stay away from the jury members. In the event you were to violate the court's instructions, you could be subject to criminal contempt of court proceedings. If I were to find you guilty of that contempt, it could incarcerate you for up to 6 months. Have any questions about the instruction?
Not at all.
Subject to that instruction, you are released from your subpoena and you are free to go. All right, at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our morning break. I will ask you to be back by 11:25.
They make them about an hour and a half.
Almost 2, so that's the reason I gave him a break. All right, I just wanted to.
Thank you.
I do have one, and I'll probably